thoughts on French New Wave in cinema and Jean-Luc Godard in particular?
I'm not a big fan of the French New Wave. It has historical importance, but of most of the filmmakers that I've seen, uh, they are highly overrated. Godard was probably the most overrated. The first film of his I ever saw was years ago before I even recognized or realized what the French New Wave was, and it was Alphaville. That was probably in the mid 80s on PBS back in New York. And I from what I recall, it just seemed to me like a lesser version of a lot of the dystopian sci-fi novels of the day. Um, uh, Later, about 20 years later, in the late O's, I first saw Breathless, and it's a really crappy movie. A lot of people say he took his influence from American film noir, but in reality, I would argue that he's imitating. He's not paying homage. Uh, there's so much. The acting is so bad. The scripting is so bad. It's so unrealistic. The camera work is so bad. Uh, as he got as he went on, and I've seen probably four, five, six of his films. The best film of his from the '60s that I saw was Contempt. That's beautifully uh, photographed with the cinematography. Of course, it has Brigitte Bardot at the height of her sexuality, so that's always a pleasure to look at. And it's not the worst film. I mean, it's sort of like a third-rate Antonioni film, but that's basically him. The 400 Blows by what's his name? Not Godard. Who did 400 Blows?
Truffaut.
Truffaut, yeah, right, Truffaut. That's a better film, and the kid gives a good performance, and it was the beginning of a career for that child actor. But he did a lot of what you might call fey or twee films after that. Jules and Jim, I believe, was Truffaut, uh, and a few others that I've seen. Again, Day for Night in the early '70s was an interesting film, but again, there's nothing that Truffaut did that was great. Louis Malle had some interesting films. But when I think of French directors, the better French directors are the non-new waves. And again, I'm not a French film expert. Henri-Georges Clouzot, his two masterpieces, Diabolique and The Wages of Fear. Uh, he was sort of like the Hitchcock before Hitchcock and better than Hitchcock. Not really before, but better than Hitchcock. I think of Robert Bresson. He's probably the best of the French filmmakers. Mouchette, Oh Hassad Balthazar, Pickpocket, Diary of a Country Priest, amongst a few others that I've seen, are his top films. And then there's the guy who did Le Samurai, whose name slips me. But the French New Wave was important because it kick-started the whole '60s generation. There were a number of new waves, but the best of the new wave cinema came from Japan and then probably America once it got to America. Hollywood was sort of the last of the nation, the cinema that actually changed because of the new wave. So historically, it was important, but they didn't really accomplish much. And it all came out of the Cahiers de Cinema magazine, and those film reviews were so bad, and they've done so much damage to film reviews over the last 50 plus years because I mean, number one, there's the little things like putting forth Alfred Hitchcock as some kind of auteur, whereas Hitchcock was a good filmmaker who made maybe two or three great films, but he was not an auteur. He was not someone who was a real artist. He was a mass appeal kind of guy. Um, the worst things that they did was, in terms of cinema, was that they made art, or they tried to, put forth the idea that film and art in particular, or in general, had to be political, that there had to be some grand statement, that it had to always serve some purpose other than merely being art. And so that's the worst that both the French New Wave and the Cahiers de Cinema that it came from, put forth.